Perhaps your mother or grandmother had a room that was always kept a little nicer than the others, with cushions plumped, ornaments dusted, and a door that children were expected to pass without leaving fingerprints. She might straighten the antimacassars before a visitor arrived, or save the best tea tray for company, even when the company was only a neighbour calling for half an hour. Habits like these were handed down quietly, without much explanation. Tonight, we are going to step into the Victorian Parlour and discover what that carefully tended room said about the woman who kept it ready. If you genuinely enjoy these calm journeys through the homes of the past, you are warmly invited to like the video and subscribe, and do leave a comment telling us where you are listening from and whether your family had a best room, a special chair, or a tea set that came out only for visitors. And if you prefer to listen with the screen put away, you can also find the show on Spotify, which seems rather fitting for a story about closing the parlour door and settling down somewhere comfortable. So make yourself at ease and let the memory of a familiar room rise gently before you, whether it belonged to your own family or to a home you once visited. Perhaps you can already see the polished sideboard, the folded cloth, and a shaft of afternoon light lying quietly across the carpet. Why was one room kept so carefully when the rest of the house was busy with daily life? What could a visitor learn from the arrangement of a chair, the condition of a hearth, or the flowers beneath a glass shade? How much work was hidden behind that impression of effortless neatness? Which belongings were displayed because they were beautiful, and which because they carried family memories? And what did the parlour reveal about the woman whose hands had dusted, mended, arranged, and prepared it? Let us go back now to a modest street in an English market town in the year 1885, where the roofs are dark from recent rain, and the lamps have not yet been put out. Behind one narrow front door, the household is beginning to stir, and the parlour waits in the pale morning light. It is not a grand room. There is no chandelier glittering over a ballroom floor, no marble fireplace imported from Italy, and no footman waiting in the hall. This is the parlour of a respectable household with limited means, the kind of room found in countless Victorian terraces, villas, cottages, and townhouses, though its size and contents might vary greatly. It is the front room, nearest the street, and because of that position, it stands between the private life of the family and the wider world outside. At this early hour, the curtains remain closed. Their fabric is heavy enough to keep out some of the winter draught, and perhaps heavy enough to keep in a little of the darkness too. The hearth is cold. A faint smell of soot mingles with beeswax, wool, old wood, and yesterday's fire. Beneath it all is the quiet scent of dried lavender tucked into a drawer or folded among linens, not strong but lingering like a familiar voice. You stand for a moment just inside the door. The room is still enough for you to hear the house around it. Somewhere behind you, a grate is being stirred in the kitchen. Water moves inside a kettle. A floorboard gives a small complaint overhead. The sound of a bucket handle touches against the rim, and then comes the soft, brisk movement of someone who has begun work before the rest of the family is properly awake. The woman of the house may be wife, mother, widow, daughter, or housekeeper. Her circumstances determine whether she does every task herself, shares it with older children, or directs one or more domestic servants. In a prosperous middle-class household, a maid might carry coal, black-lead the grate, shake rugs, and answer the bell. In a modest household, the mistress may do much of this work with her own hands. Between these two arrangements lie many variations, because Victorian society was never as tidy as the rules in its household manuals suggested. For now, imagine that this woman has some help from a young general servant, though not enough help to make the day idle. The servant tends the kitchen range and fetches water. The mistress carries the larger map of the household in her head. What must be cleaned, what must be bought, which garment needs mending, how long the coal will last, who may call, whether the youngest child has a cough, and whether the remains of yesterday's joint can be made into today's dinner without seeming too much like yesterday's joint. The parlour forms one part of that map. It may not be used first thing in the morning, but it cannot simply be forgotten. A caller might arrive, a business acquaintance might accompany her husband home, a relation might appear from the railway station with a carpet bag and the cheerful certainty that there will be room. A clergyman, tradesman, neighbour, or charitable visitor might knock at the door. The household must be able to receive the outside world without looking as though it has been surprised by it. That readiness matters. Victorian ideas of respectability placed great importance on domestic order, especially among the expanding middle and lower middle classes. A clean and properly arranged home was often treated as evidence of self-command, diligence, thrift, and good character. The woman who managed it was expected to create an atmosphere of comfort and steadiness while concealing as much of the labour as possible. The room should look peaceful. The effort required to make it peaceful should politely disappear. You may recognise that little trick. A visitor sees the cleared table, but not the hurried gathering of newspapers 10 minutes earlier. She admires the fresh cloth, but does not see the stain being rubbed at with soap before breakfast. She says how restful the room feels, while the woman who made it so remembers the loose braid on the rug and wonders whether anyone else has noticed it. The first work in the parlour begins with the fire. In cold weather, a room without a fire is not merely chilly, it can feel damp and inhospitable. Yet coal costs money, and no careful housekeeper burns it without thought. The family may keep the parlour closed when it is not needed, gathering instead in a warmer kitchen or breakfast room. If callers are expected, or if the family plans to use the parlour that evening, the grate must be prepared. Ash from the previous fire is removed, the bars are brushed. Blacklead may be applied to ironwork and polished until it has a dark sheen. The process is not clean. Soot seems to possess a quiet determination to settle on cuffs, cheeks, carpets, and any surface that has just been wiped. A cloth is spread, or the hearth is carefully guarded, because one careless mark on the rug creates another task, and tasks have a habit of inviting their relations. Paper, or kindling, is arranged beneath pieces of coal. Air must move through the grate properly. A good fire is not produced by hopeful staring, though every household has surely tried that method at least once. It requires dry fuel, sensible arrangement, and patience. When the flame catches, there is a little crackle, a wavering orange light, and then the deeper sound of coal beginning to burn. Soon the room changes. The chill pulls back from the hearth, brass catches the firelight, the polished fender warms faintly. If you sit near enough, one side of you may become comfortably toasted, while the other remains unconvinced. Victorian rooms often offered heat locally rather than evenly, and families learned to arrange themselves accordingly. The best place near the fire could be claimed by age, authority, infirmity, or a cat with no respect for rank. Once the fire is secure, the curtains are drawn. Morning enters slowly, softened by lace or net. Outside, wheels pass over the damp street. A delivery boy calls somewhere in the distance. Hooves strike the road with a hollow rhythm. The glass may carry a film from smoke and weather, for Victorian towns could be sooty places, and keeping windows bright demanded regular work. The mistress surveys the room as a whole before attending to each object. This ability to see what is out of place is one of her quiet skills. A chair has shifted. A book lies face down. A child has left a small wooden horse under the sofa, where it is plainly enjoying a night away from the nursery. One curtain hangs lower than the other. The fern on its stand looks thirsty. A patch of dust has settled along the mantel. Nothing is alarming. It is simply morning, and the room is telling her what it needs. She opens the window briefly if the weather permits. Fresh air was widely recommended in Victorian household advice, though the quality of outdoor air depended very much on where one lived. In a country village, the room might receive cold air, smelling of wet earth and hedges. In a manufacturing town, freshness could arrive with smoke attached. Even so, stale rooms were disliked, and ventilation formed part of good household management. The window stays open only long enough to stir the curtains and carry away some of the closeness. Then it is lowered, because warmth has been purchased in coal and should not be sent freely into the street. The woman moves through the room with a duster, but careful dusting is more complicated than waving a cloth over everything. Ornaments must be lifted, wiped, and returned to their places. Carved furniture holds dust in grooves. Upholstery catches it. Picture frames collect it along their upper edges, where it waits for a tall visitor or an unusually honest shaft of sunlight. The parlour may contain more objects than a modern eye expects. Victorian decorative taste, especially in the middle decades of the century, often favoured layered fabrics, patterned wallpapers, framed pictures, books, plants, small tables, porcelain figures, shells, family keepsakes, and ornaments protected under glass domes. Not every household possessed all these things, of course. Poverty, region, fashion, religion, personal taste, and the practical size of the room all mattered. Yet many parlours were arranged to look full, sheltered, and personal rather than bare. A mantelpiece forms the room's natural shelf of honour. Above it might hang a mirror, a landscape print, or a family portrait. On the mantel stand a clock, and perhaps a matching pair of ornaments. Symmetry is pleasing. 2 candlesticks, 2 vases, or 2 china dogs can give modest possessions an air of intention. If one dog has been broken and carefully mended, it may still stand opposite the other, presenting its repaired side discreetly toward the wallpaper. The clock is wound regularly, and its ticking gives the room a pulse. Time in the Victorian household is increasingly organised by clocks, railway timetables, school hours, shop hours, meals, and appointments. Yet the domestic day also follows older signals: daylight at the curtains, milk at the door, the sound of the range, the appetite of children, and the gradual lowering of the coal scuttle. Beside the clock may be a small vase holding flowers. In summer, they might come from a garden, a window box, a country walk, or a market stall. In winter, dried grasses or artificial flowers may take their place. Wax, fabric, paper, shells, feathers, and human hair were all used in decorative handiwork during the period, sometimes arranged beneath glass shades that kept off dust while displaying patience and skill. Some of these objects have been purchased. Others were made by women and girls during hours that were described as leisure, although their fingers remained busy. A woolwork picture, embroidered footstool, beaded mat, crochet edging, or Berlin wool design can demonstrate accomplishment. It also fills the home with colour. When daylight fades and the fire burns low, those reds, greens, and golds hold a little brightness of their own. The woman dusting them knows more than a visitor does. She knows which piece was made by her mother, which was sent by a sister after marriage, and which was completed during a winter when one child would not settle unless rocked by a foot beneath the cradle. She knows that the slightly uneven row of stitches belongs to a young hand learning its work. She does not need labels. The room is labelled by memory. You may let your eyes close now, if they have grown heavy, and simply follow the faint ticking of the mantel clock. The duster moves softly over wood and glass. The fire settles in the grate, and morning spreads through the room without hurry. On the centre table lies a cloth, perhaps embroidered or fringed, placed partly for beauty and partly to protect the polished surface. A family Bible may rest there, along with books, an album, a stereoscope, or periodicals chosen according to the household's means and interests. Books themselves communicate something. They suggest education, seriousness, taste, and the proper use of leisure, although some volumes may spend far more time being dusted than read. The family photograph album is a particularly important object. Photography became increasingly accessible during the Victorian era, and portrait cards could be exchanged among relatives and friends, then arranged in albums with slotted pages. Opening such an album is like entering a quiet assembly. Men stand stiffly beside columns that belong to no building they ever visited. Women rest one hand on the back of a chair. Children stare solemnly, partly because exposures once required stillness, and partly because a photographic studio was not a place for wriggling. The mistress may turn a page while cleaning, pausing over a face. Here is an aunt in a dark silk dress. Here is a brother who emigrated. Here are the children when they were smaller, dressed with such determined neatness that one suspects a struggle occurred immediately before the picture. The album sits in the parlour because family itself is part of what the room presents. Lineage need not be grand to matter. Continuity has its own dignity. Portraits on the wall or mantel perform a similar task. They show marriages, generations, and relationships. A painted portrait is costly and therefore uncommon in a modest household, but framed photographs and prints become increasingly familiar. Sometimes the most valued image is not the most artistically impressive. Its worth lies in the person who looks back from it. The parlour rug must be dealt with too. Depending on the household, it may be woven, patterned, homemade, inherited, purchased second-hand, or carefully saved for. Wall-to-wall fitted carpet is not universal. A square carpet or rug may leave painted or stained boards visible around the edges. Dust gathers beneath it, so regular sweeping and periodic lifting are necessary. For ordinary morning tidying, the carpet is brushed or swept with care. Vigorous sweeping can throw dust back into the room, so household guides commonly advised methods to keep it down, including the use of damp tea leaves scattered lightly before sweeping. The leaves helped collect dust rather than allowing it to rise in clouds. It is an economical reuse of something already in the house, although one imagines that the first person to scatter breakfast across a carpet had to speak with confidence. Crumbs, threads, coal dust, and tiny fragments collect under furniture. The woman bends to reach them. Her skirt must be managed so that it does not brush the grate. The tightness and weight of fashionable clothing vary with year and class, but domestic work is rarely performed in one's best dress. An apron protects the gown. Sleeves may be covered or turned back. Hair is pinned securely because a loose strand near flame, food, or furniture is not helpful. In a household with a maid, the mistress may inspect rather than perform every action. Yet supervision itself requires knowledge. She must know whether the grate is properly cleaned, whether polish has been used sparingly, whether the curtains need attention, and whether the room smells fresh. To direct work well, she must understand its sequence and standard. A servant may carry out the task, but the responsibility for the household's appearance is commonly placed upon the woman at its head. This expectation appears repeatedly in advice books and magazines aimed at Victorian women. The ideal mistress is organised, calm, economical, observant, morally steady, and able to make limited means look sufficient. Advice could be exacting, sometimes rather more exacting than real life allowed. Actual homes contained tired people, muddy boots, burnt puddings, sick children, unexpected bills, and ornaments that refuse to remain centred. The gap between ideal and reality is where much of domestic skill lives. A competent housekeeper does not inhabit a perfect world. She adjusts an imperfect one throughout the day. The sofa cushions are beaten and turned. Loose covers, if used, are straightened. During warmer months, furniture might be protected with lighter covers, while heavy curtains and textiles could be changed or stored in households able to maintain seasonal routines. Fabrics require constant attention because they absorb smoke and odors, attract dust, and fade in sunlight. They also make a room feel soft, warm, and enclosed. Antimacassars may be placed over the backs and arms of upholstered chairs. Their name comes from macassar oil, a popular hair preparation that could mark fabric. These washable protective cloths are practical, even if later generations sometimes regarded them as the official uniform of the best room. Crocheted, lace, or embroidered versions can add decoration, while guarding expensive upholstery from pomaded heads. The mistress checks that each one lies straight. This is not simply fussiness. Furniture costs money and is expected to last. A chair may serve one family for decades, be recovered, repaired, passed to a daughter, or moved from the best room to a bedroom as fashions change. Protection is part of thrift, and thrift is not merely spending less. It is understanding the life of things. The parlour chairs themselves reveal how the room is used. There may be an armchair near the fire for the household head or an elderly relation, smaller chairs for visitors, and perhaps a low nursing chair. Furniture is often arranged for conversation, not all pointed in one direction, as modern seating tends to be toward a television. People face one another or turn toward the hearth, table, piano, or window. This means the room anticipates company even while empty. A chair waits to receive a body. A footstool waits for tired feet. The table holds the possibility of tea, cards, sewing, reading, or a hand laid gently upon its surface during conversation. The woman who arranges the room is arranging future human movement. She considers light. The best chair for needlework should stand near the window. A guest should not be forced into a draught. An older person may need the stronger lamp in the evening. The piano stool must not obstruct the path. A small child should not be placed within easy reach of the most delicate ornament, unless the household wishes to turn an ordinary visit into a test of everyone's character. This kind of arrangement is learned through experience. It may never be written down. The woman notices where people naturally sit, which floorboard catches a chair leg, and how far a dress extends when its wearer settles. She learns to make the room graceful without making it impossible to use. By 8 or 9 in the morning, the parlour has been aired, warmed if necessary, dusted, swept, and put in order. The door may then be closed again while work continues elsewhere. The room's calm depends upon this boundary. Behind the door lies an ordered surface. Beyond it lies breakfast washing, beds to make, children to dress, deliveries to receive, food to prepare, and all the little interruptions from which a household day is woven. You follow the mistress toward the back of the house. The temperature changes as you leave the parlour. The passage may be narrow and dim, with oilcloth or boards underfoot. From the kitchen comes stronger heat and a richer mixture of smells: coal smoke, soap, damp wool, bread, onions, tea, and iron warmed on the range. The contrast matters. The parlour is the public face, but the kitchen and scullery are the working heart. One depends on the other. The polished tea tray seen by a visitor must first be washed, dried, carried, and stored. The white cloth must be boiled or scrubbed, rinsed, dried, ironed, folded, and protected. The cake on its plate begins as flour dust on a table and grease on a basin. Every composed surface has a backstage. Breakfast may be simple or substantial according to class, income, region, and household routine. Tea is widely consumed. Bread, butter, porridge, bacon, eggs, fish, preserves, or leftovers may appear in varying combinations. In some homes, the family eats together in a dining room or breakfast room. In smaller houses, meals may be taken in the kitchen except on special occasions, while the parlour is reserved for callers and evening use. The mistress watches quantities closely. She may keep household accounts in a notebook, recording coal, candles, meat, milk, bread, soap, starch, and small payments to tradespeople. Even if she does not write every expense, she remembers patterns. She knows how quickly sugar disappears when children are home, how much butter remains, and whether the tea caddy feels suspiciously light. Tea itself deserves care. It is valuable, socially important, and central to hospitality. In many households, tea is stored in a caddy under the mistress's supervision. By the later 19th century, prices have fallen and tea is far more widely available than it had been earlier, but it still carries ritual. The warming of the pot, the spooning of leaves, the addition of boiling water, and the measured pouring all create a small ceremony familiar across classes, though the quality of tea and the accompanying food differ. After breakfast, dishes are cleared and the serious work of the morning continues. Monday is traditionally associated in many households with washing, though routines vary. A laundry day fills the house with steam and labour. Water must be heated, garments sorted, stains treated, linens washed, rinsed, wrung, blued where appropriate, starched, dried, and later ironed. A larger household may send some washing out or employ a laundress. A poorer one cannot. The parlour is protected from this work as much as possible, yet laundry reaches it in indirect ways. The lace curtain must be washed eventually. Antimacassars need cleaning. Table covers collect dust. Fine fabrics cannot be treated roughly. The mistress must know what can be boiled, what will shrink, what will bleed colour, and what must be pressed beneath a cloth. That knowledge is practical chemistry learned through instruction, observation, and sometimes mistakes. Soap behaves differently in hard water. Starch must be mixed without lumps. Irons must be hot enough to smooth, but not so hot that they scorch. Before thermostatic electric irons, heat is judged by experience, perhaps by holding the iron near the cheek, spitting lightly upon it, or testing it on an inconspicuous cloth. An iron that is too cool wastes effort. One that is too hot leaves a permanent record of the error. The woman moves between kitchen, scullery, bedrooms and passage. She keeps the parlour door closed against steam and smells. If a caller arrives unexpectedly, she removes her work apron if there is time, smooths her hair, and enters the front room as though she has spent the morning waiting peacefully beside the fern. This transformation is one of the subtle performances of domestic life. It is not necessarily false. The tidy parlour is genuinely part of the home, and the welcome is genuine too. Yet the visitor sees a selected moment. She does not see the damp sleeves, the account book open beside the flower bin, or the child being asked in a firm whisper to stay out of sight until his collar is clean. A knock at the front door changes the rhythm of the house. The sound carries along the passage. If there is a servant, she answers. If not, the mistress does, perhaps wiping her hands quickly before she goes. Calling customs could be quite formal among prosperous Victorians, involving particular hours, calling cards, and rules about how long a visit should last. Among neighbours and relatives, practice is often less rigid, but manners still matter. A caller may leave a card if the woman is not at home or not receiving. In more socially ambitious households, cards help manage networks of acquaintance. Names, addresses, folded corners, and timing can carry meaning. For many ordinary women, however, a visit is simply a visit. Someone from nearby has come with news, an inquiry, a borrowed pattern, a request, or the welcome prospect of conversation. The caller is shown into the parlour. Now the morning's work becomes visible through its absence. There is no dust on the chair. The grate is presentable. The air is not stale. The table is clear enough to receive a tray. The mistress enters, and the room supports her before she has spoken a word. Her dress need not be rich. In fact, too much display could look imprudent. But it should be neat and appropriate. Her cuffs are clean if possible. Her hair is controlled. She offers a chair positioned away from the draught, and in that simple gesture, she shows that she has thought about another person's comfort. The visitor looks around, though perhaps not obviously. People have always read rooms. She notices the family photographs, the books, the piano, the quality of the carpet, and the care of the plants. She may recognize a woolwork pattern or admire a vase. She may privately observe that the wallpaper is rather dark, just as the mistress may privately observe that the visitor has come before luncheon and appears likely to stay through it. There is gentle calculation on both sides, but there can also be real affection. Women's visits provide companionship, information, help, and relief from routine. News passes through the parlour, an engagement, a birth, an illness now improving, a new shop opening, a recipe that uses fewer eggs, a school matter, a relation expected from Bristol, a servant seeking a new place, or curtains available cheaply from a household moving away. Conversation is one of the parlour's chief purposes. It builds and maintains the small networks on which domestic life relies. A neighbour may lend a preserving pan. A cousin may recommend a dressmaker. A friend may sit with the children during an appointment. A woman newly arrived in town may learn which grocer gives fair weight and which chimney sweep leaves the least impressive quantity of soot behind him. Tea may be offered, depending on the time and formality of the visit. The tray arrives with cups, saucers, spoons, milk, sugar, and perhaps bread and butter, biscuits, seed cake, or something small made at home. A good tea table is not necessarily extravagant. Its success lies in freshness, order, and the sense that the guest is welcome. The mistress pours. This act places her at the centre of the gathering. She knows who takes milk, who avoids sugar, and who says she wants only half a cup before accepting a second full one. The china may be the best set, or an everyday set, chosen according to the visitor. Pieces do not always match perfectly. A broken cup has been replaced, a saucer belongs to an earlier pattern, and one teaspoon is slightly different from the others. Arranged carefully, the service still appears harmonious. The best china carries its own history. Perhaps it was a wedding gift. Perhaps 3 pieces came from a mother's cupboard. Perhaps the set was purchased gradually, one affordable addition at a time. Ceramics became available to a broad range of consumers during the 19th century, and transfer-printed patterns brought ornament to modest tables. Blue and white, floral designs, gilded rims, and commemorative pieces all found their way into homes. To handle such china is to handle both money and memory. The mistress does not grip the teapot carelessly. She supports its weight. She watches the edge of the tray. Children may be allowed to carry spoons long before they are entrusted with the cream jug. This is not lack of confidence. It is historical experience. The cake has been cut evenly. A knife lies ready. Crumbs fall onto plates rather than carpet if all goes well. The caller remarks that the room is very comfortable, and the mistress answers modestly, perhaps saying that it is only a small room, or that the carpet is becoming worn. Direct pride is softened by convention, yet she is pleased that the work has succeeded. What the parlour says at this moment is not that its keeper possesses endless wealth. In a modest household, it may say almost the opposite. It says that she can make good use of what she has. Furniture is maintained. Firelight is reflected by clean brass. A small bunch of flowers gives colour. The cloth is neatly mended. Nothing need be new if it is well cared for. A visible repair can even be part of the room's story, though finer repairs are arranged discreetly. Upholstery is darned. A table leg is tightened. A frame is regilded or touched up. Curtains are turned so that faded sections are less obvious. A worn rug may be repositioned beneath furniture. The woman understands angles, light, and the forgiving nature of a strategically placed footstool. Her resourcefulness does not announce itself. It appears as continuity. If you are resting now, you can let the voices in the parlour soften into a pleasant murmur. Cups touch their saucers, coal gives a quiet sigh in the grate, and beyond the curtains the street carries on without requiring your attention. When the visitor leaves, the front door closes gently. The room must be reset. Cups are gathered, crumbs are brushed away, chairs return to their usual positions. The fire is checked. The mistress may pause for one small breath before going back to the kitchen, where dinner has not prepared itself out of respect for her social obligations. Midday dinner is the principal meal in many households, particularly among working families. While wealthier or more fashionable households may dine later, Victorian mealtimes differ by class and change over the century. In this home, the main hot meal comes in the early afternoon. Its preparation began long before the parlour visit. Cooking on a coal range requires judgment. Heat cannot be raised or lowered by turning a neat little dial. Dampers, fuel, draft, and position all matter. The cook learns the hot areas of the oven and the temper of the fire. Pans are heavy, kettles are always needed. A range warms the kitchen, heats water, and cooks food, but it also consumes coal and demands cleaning. The mistress plans meals according to season and price. Potatoes, bread, vegetables, puddings, soups, pies, stews, fish, and meat appear in forms shaped by region and means. Leftovers are transformed rather than discarded. Cold meat may become hash, rissoles, pie, or a warmed dish with gravy. Bones may flavour stock. Stale bread may thicken, coat, or become pudding. Dripping is saved. Nothing useful is thoughtlessly surrendered. Cookery books exist, but everyday knowledge often passes from woman to woman. Quantities may be judged by eye and touch. Dough should feel a certain way beneath the fingers. Pastry must be handled lightly. A pudding cloth needs room for expansion. A cake's readiness is recognized by smell, color, spring, and the way it leaves the tin. Written recipes can be brief because they assume experience. A daughter learns beside her mother, aunt, grandmother, older sister, employer, or cook. She begins with small tasks, picking herbs, shelling peas, greasing tins, washing currants, stirring without splashing, and watching the fire. She learns that a little is a genuine measurement when the person saying it knows what she is doing. In the kitchen, sounds overlap. A knife taps the board. A saucepan lid trembles. The clock marks the hour. Someone pumps or carries water. A child recites a lesson, then loses her place because the pudding has become more interesting than geography. The mistress answers a question while checking the oven and remembering that the parlour lamp needs oil before evening. Domestic management depends on this ability to carry several threads at once. One task is in the hand, another in the mind, and a third is waiting for the correct temperature. Modern households might call it multitasking. The Victorian woman would probably call it Tuesday. After dinner comes clearing and washing. Grease must be removed from plates and pans. Water cools quickly. Soap is used with care. Wooden tables are scrubbed along the grain. Knives may need special attention because steel can rust, and handles may not tolerate soaking. Silver or electroplate is polished when necessary, though over-polishing can wear surfaces. Copper and brass require their own methods. Again, the parlour depends on unseen expertise. The spoon beside the teacup shines because someone knew how to clean it. The glass chimney of the lamp gives clear light because soot was removed without cracking it. The table does not bear a white water ring because a mat was placed beneath the pot. Small acts prevent damage before repair is needed. During the afternoon, the household rhythm may soften. Younger children nap or play. Older children return from school. The mistress turns to sewing, accounts, correspondence, preserving, shopping, or seasonal work. If the weather is fair, she may go out for provisions or receive deliveries at the door. Tradespeople call regularly, bringing bread, milk, meat, coal, groceries, and other goods, depending on location and means. Shopping is not always a matter of wandering among shelves and choosing whatever appeals. Prices are compared, quality judged, and credit carefully managed. Many households maintain accounts with local tradespeople, settling them periodically. The mistress must recognize good meat, fresh fish, sound vegetables, honest weight, and suitable cloth. Her choices enter every room of the house. When she returns, perhaps carrying a basket, she passes the parlour door and looks in. Afternoon light has changed the room. The wallpaper appears warmer. Dust, if any has escaped attention, is more visible. The fern casts a delicate shadow. The clock continues to tick with the calm confidence of an object that has not carried groceries uphill. Plants bring life into the parlour, especially during the Victorian enthusiasm for ferns. Fern collecting and cultivation became fashionable across social levels, and ferneries, Wardian cases, pressed specimens, and decorative fern motifs appeared in many forms. A simple potted fern on a stand can give a room freshness and grace. Aspidistras later become famously associated with respectable interiors because of their ability to tolerate low light and indoor conditions. Plants also require care. Leaves collect dust and may be wiped. Pots must not leak onto furniture. Watering must be sufficient but not excessive. A plant growing toward the window is turned. Dead leaves are removed. Like so many things in the parlour, its healthy appearance represents repeated small attention rather than one grand effort. Flowers may be arranged with similar thought. Victorian florography, often called the language of flowers, was popularized through books and gift culture, though people did not necessarily conduct entire secret conversations through bouquets, as later imagination sometimes suggests. Flowers certainly carried associations and sentiment. More simply, they brought season, colour, and fragrance indoors. A sprig of rosemary, a cluster of violets, roses from a garden, or autumn leaves arranged in a vase can transform a table at little cost. The woman sees what is available and makes use of it. Beauty does not always arrive from a shop. Sometimes it grows beside the path and comes home wrapped in paper. The children know that the parlour is special. How special depends on the family. In some homes it is opened only for Sundays, formal callers, Christmas, weddings, funerals, or important occasions. In others it is used daily as a family sitting room. The familiar phrase, best parlour, distinguishes a formal room from an everyday one in houses large enough to have both. Smaller homes may ask one room to perform several roles. Children are taught the rules. Shoes should be clean. Hands should not touch wallpaper. The horsehair sofa is not a landscape over which toy soldiers must campaign. The tassel on the curtain is not a bell rope, however convincingly it presents itself as one. Rules protect objects, but they also teach children how to behave in social space. A young girl may be invited into the parlour to practice the piano. The instrument, if the household can afford one, is both entertainment and a sign of accomplishment. Piano ownership expanded during the 19th century, and music became a central part of middle-class domestic life. Lessons cost money, sheet music costs money, and the piano itself takes up a heroic amount of space, so its presence says something about family priorities and aspirations. The girl sits on the stool, adjusts her skirt, and begins a scale. Notes move unevenly at first. One hand hesitates while the other rushes ahead. From the kitchen, her mother hears every misplaced note without needing to see the page. Practice continues. Repetition gradually becomes music. For girls especially, musical ability was encouraged as a social accomplishment, though many also played for genuine pleasure. Family singing, hymns, popular songs, dances, and arrangements of well-known pieces could fill the evening. The parlour piano allowed music to be made at home before recorded sound became common. There was no button to press. Someone had to know the tune. Perhaps there is no piano in this particular room. There may instead be a harmonium, concertina, violin, or simply voices. A family does not need a costly instrument to sing. Songs are carried in memory. Words are learned from printed sheets, books, church, music hall, school, or relatives. A mother hums while sewing, and years later her daughter discovers that the tune has followed her into another house. The afternoon may also bring needlework. The mistress takes a work basket into the parlour because the light is good. Inside are needles, thread, thimble, pins, scissors, tape, buttons, scraps, and perhaps a small lump of wax for thread. These modest tools maintain the family wardrobe. Clothes are costly in relation to many household incomes, and garments are expected to last. Seams are repaired before they widen. Stockings are darned. Cuffs and collars are replaced. Buttons are saved. Adult clothing can be altered for younger family members. Fabric from an old dress may reappear as a child's garment. Apron, patch, lining, or household cloth. Mending is often done in the intervals between other duties. A woman sews while listening to a child read, watching a pot, receiving a familiar friend, or sitting with the family after supper. Her hands continue almost automatically. The needle enters, draws through, and returns. Thread makes a faint whisper against fabric. The object being mended may later appear in the parlour on Sunday, looking respectable once more. No one sees the worn section reinforced from within. The strength lies underneath. This principle belongs to the room as much as to clothing. The parlour presents a finished surface, but its stability is built through reinforcement. Tightened screws, darned covers, polished edges, cleaned chimneys, replaced cords, and habits repeated before disorder grows. Readiness is not achieved in a single burst before company comes. It is accumulated. A household manual may prescribe a weekly sequence for cleaning rooms, furniture, windows, silver, and textiles. Real households adapt the schedule to weather, health, family size, and available help. Spring cleaning brings a more thorough assault on soot and dust. Curtains come down. Carpets may be lifted and beaten outdoors. Walls, paintwork, chimneys, mattresses, bedding, and cupboards receive attention. Spring cleaning is partly practical in a world of coal fires, oil lamps, candles, and streets that carry mud to the threshold. Winter leaves residue. As days lengthen, the house is opened and refreshed. The work is substantial, yet it also creates a feeling of renewal. Windows stand open. Fabric moves in the breeze. Sunlight reaches places that have been shadowed for months. The parlour looks temporarily unlike itself. Chairs are moved, ornaments gathered, pictures taken down, and the carpet rolled. A room usually defined by order becomes a workshop. The bare boards reveal faded lines and hidden dust. The walls show clean silhouettes where frames have hung. Familiar objects appear oddly vulnerable when removed from their positions. Rugs and carpets may be carried outside and beaten, producing clouds that explain why the task was not attempted indoors. Upholstery is brushed. Curtains are washed or aired according to material. Chimneys are swept. Paintwork is cleaned cautiously. Wallpaper cannot simply be scrubbed like a floor, and household advice offered various methods for removing marks, some more successful than others. The mistress directs the sequence so that cleaned things are not dirtied again. This is a form of logistics. The chimney should not be swept after fresh curtains are hung. The carpet should not be laid while dust remains on the upper ledges. Water, cloths, brushes, ladders, and willing helpers must appear at the correct time. Children may be sent outside or given useful tasks. Older daughters help fold, wipe, sort and carry. Sons may be recruited to move furniture, though they can show a mysterious ability to vanish when a carpet requires lifting. Eventually everything returns. The floor is clean, the curtains smell fresh, and the ornaments stand once more in their accustomed places. For a few days, the family enters the room with particular caution. The renewed parlour has the solemn beauty of a cake not yet cut. Then ordinary life resumes. A coal fragment escapes the scuttle. A child leans against a cushion. Dust begins its patient descent. A home remains alive by being used. If your thoughts are wandering softly now, there is no need to bring them sharply back. You can drift in and out of the room as the curtains lift in the spring air, hearing only the brush against the boards and the far-off sound of a cart in the street. As afternoon moves toward evening in 1885, the mistress begins to prepare the parlour for family use. Daylight fades early in winter. Shutters may be closed and curtains drawn to keep warmth in and darkness out. The fire is replenished. Lamps are brought, trimmed, filled, and lit with care. Lighting has changed greatly across the Victorian period. Candles remain in use, while oil lamps provide stronger illumination. Gas lighting is available in many towns and cities, and in some homes, though not everywhere, and not without cost, smell, heat, and practical concerns. Electric domestic lighting exists by the later 19th century, but is still rare. Most ordinary families know evening light as something tended rather than assumed. An oil lamp requires a clean wick and chimney. If the wick is too high, it smokes. If too low, the light is poor. The glass must be kept clean. Fuel must be stored and handled sensibly. The resulting glow gathers around the table and leaves corners in shadow. Faces emerge warmly. The rest of the room withdraws. This limited circle of light shapes activity. Sewing is brought nearer. A reader angles the page. Fine work strains the eyes, so women are advised to use good light, though good light is not always available. The fire adds its own flickering brightness, turning the brass fender gold and making the shadows of plants tremble upon the wall. The family enters one by one. A husband returns from work or business, bringing cold air with his coat and perhaps a newspaper under his arm. Children finish lessons or wash for the evening. An elderly mother takes the chair nearest the hearth. The mistress looks around and makes small adjustments almost without thinking. A lamp moved closer, a cushion offered, the poker used, a curtain edge tucked away from the draught. The parlour now says something different than it did to the morning caller. Its formality softens. A slippered foot rests on the fender. The newspaper opens with a rustle. A work basket appears. Someone reaches for a book. The room remains orderly, but it belongs to the family. Victorian family evenings varied immensely, and the idealized domestic scene promoted in art and literature should not be mistaken for every household's reality. Working hours could be long, space could be limited. Not all families were harmonious, musical, or able to gather nightly around a cheerful fire. Still, many homes sought moments of shared rest, however brief, and the parlour offered a setting in which to create them. One child reads aloud. Reading aloud allows a single lamp and a single book to serve several people. It also turns literature, news, sermons, travel writing, poetry, or serial fiction into a communal experience. The reader must pace the sentences and pronounce unfamiliar words. Listeners sew, knit, mend, or stare into the fire. A chapter ends at precisely the wrong moment. There are requests for one more page. The reader claims that the light is poor, which may be true, or may indicate that the difficult paragraph ahead has already been noticed. A bookmark is placed. Tomorrow holds the continuation. Periodicals and newspapers bring the wider world into the parlour. They carry reports of public events, advertisements, household advice, fiction, fashion plates, puzzles and correspondence. A woman may read magazines directed toward female audiences, containing recipes, patterns, domestic counsel, stories, and discussions of etiquette. She does not accept every instruction uncritically. Experience has already taught her that some writers possess very large houses and rather optimistic opinions about servants. Printed advice often assumes that the household mistress can plan every hour with calm precision. The real woman reads a recommendation for keeping gloves spotless while remembering that the baby has chewed one. She learns what is useful and leaves the rest on the page. The children may play a quiet game. Cards, drafts, dominoes, puzzles, and word games suit the table. At festive times, parlour games become livelier, with guessing, acting, forfeits, and laughter. The room designed to display self-control can become surprisingly noisy at Christmas. Even on an ordinary evening, humour finds its place. A father reads an amusing item aloud. A child imitates a teacher. Someone loses a button at the precise moment the sewing basket has been put away. The mistress smiles and retrieves it. Domestic dignity is flexible enough to include laughter. Music may follow. The piano lid is raised, sheet music placed, and the lamp adjusted. A daughter plays. Others sing. The mother may know an older song that does not require a printed page. Her voice is not trained, but it is familiar, and familiarity gives music a tenderness no formal performance can reproduce. A song can attach itself to a room. Years later, when furniture has moved and wallpaper has changed, the opening notes may return the listener to the exact angle of firelight on the mantel.